All right, everyone. Big Shabbat Shalom to all of you. Welcome. Welcome to the river, as we affectionately call it. The place where we learn to get off our riverbanks, whether we've come from a Christian side, a Judea side, a mixture of both, and that we come into the waters, the living waters of life, that we may be washed. A big welcome to all of you gathered here today on the live stream, but also to those of you watching on the video or listening to the podcast. If you do wish to come join us live and be part of the live stream, we do gather every weekly Sabbath at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And if you're wondering how to join us, just head over to riverbranchfellowship.com, scroll down on the main homepage, and you'll see a link to subscribe to our weekly newsletter, which when you click on that link will bring up this box, allowing you to put your first and last name and email in to put you on our mailing list so that you can receive the weekly newsletter, which contains all the login information required to join us on Zoom. Come and say hi. Be a part of a remnant that is learning to wake up from their slumber and learning what it means to be our King's covenant people. Okay, we are concluding today our journey through this heavenly census. What a journey it's been. It's been rich. It's been deep. Who would have thought that the counting of the Omer, because this is where we started, the counting of the Omer, how deep and rich a topic it could be. I hope people understand after going through this series or are beginning to grasp why Curtis and I would say that the understanding of the Feast of Weeks, the counting of the Omer and Shavuot has by and large just... It's not even being misunderstood. It's just vacant. Vacant would be the best way to put it. It's just not there. You know, I struggle to find anywhere, actually, where people are speaking on these topics, the way we've been covering them these past 7 parts. You know, this series has been very rich, deep. It's made our spirits leap for joy. But today we have to kind of bring it back into perspective. And I mentioned at the end of last week that there is actually a warning attached to this. You know, the Apostle Paul says, if I had all understanding of the mysteries, but do not have love, it's for nothing. And I've become as a sounding cymbal. And, you know, we have looked at the depth of the plan of redemption, at the depth of some of these prophecies regarding our Messiah fulfilling the spring appointed times almost 2,000 years ago. We've even looked last week, especially at some of the more plan of redemption mystery side of things. But, you know, what good is it all if we're not walking the walk, so to speak? And today is going to be one of these. I don't want it to be anticlimactic, if I can say that, but we have to bring things back into their sharp perspective. And we're going to do that today when looking at this idea of the potter and the clay. Before we jump into that, let's recap what we did last week. We saw that Elohim counts the tears from our wanderings in the exile of the time domain. We saw how actually the scattering and regathering of the house of Israel within the time domain is a shadow picture of our time here now in exile in what we would call life. Something that King David would refer to as the valley of the shadow of death. And Elohim is counting. Elohim asks us to count. Yet he's doing a count of his own that is far greater beyond what he's asked us to do. We saw how the earthly census of the house of Israel is actually a shadow picture of the heavenly census. When you look at the Torah commands regarding the earthly census, it says that you're to give half a shekel of silver for the atonement of your soul. And we saw how in the part previous to last week's that actually man cannot pay the ransom. And so the very commandments of the earthly census kind of put us in this weird predicament. How are we to atone for our souls? And we saw how within the Hebrew of this, when you go to count the numbers of Israel, the numbers of the house of Israel, the Hebrew actually says, when you lift up the head of the sons of Israel, and that this was tied to redemption. And I believe this is what Yeshua was referring to when he said, lift up your heads for your redemption draws near. That the earthly census is a shadow picture of this great heavenly census that Elohim is keeping count of. We saw that Elohim writes in his book the names of those that fear him, i.e., his treasured possession. And this is taken from the book of Malachi. And so there are those in the house of Israel that fear him, and there are those in the house of Israel that do not. Okay? And we'll get into this today a bit more. But a time is coming where a distinction will be made once again, and it will be clearly evident who fears him and who doesn't, because Elohim is keeping a record. He's keeping the names written in a book. Elohim writes in his book the names of those that were born in Zion, and that this is ultimately pointing to the new or renewed Jerusalem. Again, pointing back to this thing of Elohim is keeping track of those that fear him and those that do not. You know, and this brings up the whole things of what Paul would say, that there are those in the body that mind the earthly matters, the fleshly, temporal matters, but we are to be those that mind the heavenly matters. The forefathers of the faith knew that their homeland was not of this earth, but that their homeland was actually a heavenly one. They had this understanding, and the book of Hebrews states this very plainly, that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob knew they were sojourners on the earth. Yeshua made this statement regarding, he sends out the 70 with authority to cast out demons, and they come back rejoicing. Even the demons are subject to us with your authority. And he says, do not rejoice in this, that the spirits are subject to you, but rejoice that your names are written in heaven. Again, this heavenly census. And the implication here was, not all of the 70 made it to the bridal position. And so again, this heavenly census, the names being written on in the stars, those that fear him versus those that do not, those that mind the heavenly versus those that mind the earthly. We saw that Elohim numbers the stars and gives them all their names, right? And that this is directly tied to the seed of Abraham. Abraham was told that his seed would be as numerous as the stars if you could count them. Well, the writings clearly tell us that Elohim has numbered them all. And not only that, he's given them names. And I believe this is a direct allusion to the promise to the overcomer, that he will be given a new name that only Elohim knows. And that this would then tie into the promise in Daniel 12, that those who lead many to righteousness, those that have wisdom and insight, will shine like the stars in the heavens. And so when we bring all of this together, we're essentially seeing a picture of the bride of Messiah, his treasured possession. We looked at Psalm 136. I'll just leave it there because that psalm, those few verses were so deep, were so rich, and it gave us insight into a perspective that the ancients just knew intrinsically. They understood they were sojourners here on the earth. They understood that the time domain was a form of exile. And King David clearly said that this time domain is essentially for the perfecting of our innermost substance, okay? That which is within us, that is from outside of time, that was yet to be perfected. And we ask the question, is this the part of the purpose of this test? to perfect our unperfected substance, to complete the work done in an incomplete vessel, which then really sheds a lot of insight and generates more questions into the account of the garden and Adam and Eve. We saw that our days were formed. Just as Elohim formed Adam from the dust of the ground, that our days were formed before there was even any of them, that our days were written in his book. And so our days have been numbered. Elohim decides life. He decides when we go in. He decides when we come out, when we die, essentially. However, there's this period of time during our days being numbered where we are being tested. We are being tested, and in that test, our sovereignty and our free will comes sharply into play. Elohim formed the time domain for the seat of judgment. We saw that Elohim did not create it tohu, formless and void, that was not his doing, what we read in Genesis 1. But we see that the time domain itself was actually created for the seat of judgment, ultimately, I believe, pointing to the great white throne judgment, to Elohim and his bride judging all things, both in the heavens and on the earth and underneath the earth, because this plan of redemption is about the cosmic jubilee of reuniting and bringing all into one through Messiah and the power of his redemption. And we finished off with this question. So what does all this have to do with the potter and the clay? And so let's jump into today's message. Why is all this important? Because here we are on the eve, as it were, of the fulfillment of the fall appointed times. And we give a lot of weighting to the fall appointed times, but we forget that prophetically speaking, the spring appointed times being fulfilled almost 2,000 years ago, this proclamation that went forth from Shavuot, from the early assemblies, from the disciples, what was that message? What was the proclamation? That which we are to recount, that which we are to number. And this is what this whole series has been about, because we need to know what that proclamation is so that we can then proclaim it to those that desperately need to hear this, especially as we draw closer to the fulfillment of the next round of prophecy. Okay, the potter. In Jeremiah 18, we read this, the word that came to Jeremiah from Yah. Arise and go down to the potter's house, and there I will let you hear my words. The word potter in Hebrew is yotzer, yotzer. The root word of yotzer is this root word yatsar, which we covered last week. To mold, to form, okay? This was the word used that Elohim has formed our days before we even had them. It's also the word that's used that Elohim formed Adam from the dust of the ground, okay? And so one who yatsar in Hebrew is called a yotzer. And it's actually pottery language. It's pottery language. We see that this word again, just to remind everyone, it can mean to mold, to form, to fashion, to frame, but it can be used of forming human activity, divine activity, think the time domain, think creation, of individuals at conception. This is what we looked at in Psalm 136. The forming of the house of Israel, but also to preordain, to predetermine, to plan divine purpose of a situation, which would then tie into the Apostle Paul's word that we were preordained to be the house of Israel through the blood of Messiah, through the faith of Abraham. But we saw that this word yatsar has a dual meaning. And so, yes, it can mean to form, but it can mean to press in the sense of being narrow, to bind, to be in distress, to be cramped, narrow, to distress. Think narrow is the gate to life, trials, tribulation, the crushing of our lives. And so Elohim as the potter not only formed us in the womb, he formed us and our days before there were even any, but he's also the one who allows us to go through crushing. He is the potter, we are the clay. It continues, so I went down to the potter's house, and there he was working at his wheel. And the vessel he was making of clay was spoiled in the potter's hand. And he reworked it into another vessel as it seemed good to the potter to do. Think of what the Apostle Paul would say, that there is, in a great house, there are vessels unto honor and vessels unto dishonor. Think of the parable of the talents. You had the fruitful servant. You had the wicked, lazy servant. One unto honor, one unto shame. One unto rewards, one unto losses. Then the word of Yah came to me. O house of Israel, can I not do with you as this potter has done, declares Yah. Behold, like the clay in the potter's hand, so you are in my hand, O house of Israel. And so what Yah's essentially saying is that he formed his people to be a particular thing, but the vessel became spoilt. And so he had to break it down and reform it. Now think of back to Psalm 136, this understanding that our days were formed. His eyes saw our unformed substance, and that being part of being put into this test, into this time domain, is for the very shaping of our lives, for the crushing of our lives, to perfect that which is not yet perfected. Again, think of Adam and Eve in the garden. Though they were glorified, they hadn't yet been perfected. And we see that Yeshua, in Paul's words in Philippians 2, that Yeshua, and in the book of Hebrews, that through death and suffering, he was perfected and exalted to the right hand of Elohim. And our King says, come follow me. Now, therefore, say to the men of Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, thus says Yah, behold, I am shaping or forming disaster against you and devising a plan against you. Return, repent, everyone from his evil way, and amend your ways and deeds. So it's telling you how this vessel became spoilt through our unrepentance. But they say that is in vain. We will follow our own plans, and will everyone act according to the stubbornness of his evil heart. And so it's giving you an insight into why the vessel became spoiled. Unrepentance, pride, thinking you know what's best, though you are the clay and not the potter. You're assuming yourself to the position of potter is essentially what's going on. And this will become very clear. In Isaiah 29, this is a passage that I've quoted many times. And so I want to bring it into the context of this discussion today. In Isaiah 29, before what actually precedes this passage that we're going to read, is that Yah's going to blind the eyes of the prophets, and he's going to blind the eyes of the seers, those in authority within the house of Israel. He's actually going to conceal from them the meanings of the book, as it were. Why? Yah said, because this people draw near to me with their mouth and honor me with their lips, while their hearts are far from me, and their fear of me is a commandment taught by men. Yeshua would say that actually the reverence of Elohim has been switched with the teachings and traditions of men. And so this is what we covered extensively in the leaven and whitewashing series, the power of leaven. Therefore, behold, I will again do wonderful things with this people. The word therefore wonderful is the word Palah, by the way, the name of Messiah, wonder, counselor, with wonder upon wonder. And look at this, the wisdom of their wise men shall perish, and the discernment of their discerning men shall be hidden. This is within a believing body context, okay? And so what do we see today? Nothing new under the sun. All these multitudes of religions, all these multitudes of denominations, the harlot that has seduced the people of the house of Israel. But this passage goes on and gives you deeper insight. You who hide deep from Yah, your counsel, whose deeds are in the dark, and who say, who sees us and who knows us? You see the pride now coming, hiding from Elohim, from the potter, the one that does know best, hiding in the dark. Yeshua in John 3 would say that those who are of Elohim, they come to the light so that everyone can see that their deeds were wrought in the light. And I believe this is pointing to the light of accountability, the light of discipleship. You who turn things upside down, shall the potter be regarded as the clay? Now, who is the potter? Elohim is the potter. Shall Elohim be regarded as mankind? Will you bring Elohim down to your level, or will you exalt yourself to the level of Elohim? And thus, in the process, I'm going to make a point here, creating Elohim in your own image. Remember that Yah created man in his image. He formed, like a potter, Adam from the dust of the ground, and he said, let us make man in our image. But here, the clay is making the potter in its own image. That the thing made should say of its maker, he did not make me. Or the thing formed say of him who formed it, he has no understanding. I know better. Can you see the pride coming? Exalting yourself to the level of Elohim, bringing Elohim down to our level, creating him according to our own image. The consequences of that, and so you see, not only does spiritual delusion become a consequence of this, but it's giving you the character that you're doing this in his name. You're praising him with your lips, but actually you're preventing the very heart circumcision. Again, this should be a reminder to maybe go revisit the Power of Leaven series and how leaven leads to whitewashing and whitewashing leads to spiritual delusion. And all of this is to do with this plan of redemption, of being plugged into a time domain. Again, how did the earth become formless and void? Because that was not Elohim's doing. What are the consequences of idolatry? Because here, in the instances that we've been given, the clay is creating Elohim into its own image, which is a form of idolatry. It actually breaks the third commandment, do not have any graven images. Psalm 135, verses 15 through to 18 says, the idols of the nations are silver and gold, the work of human hands. They have mouths, but do not speak. They have eyes, but do not see. They have ears, but do not hear. Nor is there any breath in their mouths. The word there for breath is ruach. Those who make them become like them. So do all who trust in them. And so we've been given a warning here that when we have idolatry in our lives, this is where the spiritual delusion comes from. We become like the things we worship, is what this psalm is saying. We become like what we worship. Now, If we're worshiping the one true living Elohim, that's good news because we'll slowly become like him. But if we've created Elohim in our own image, woe unto us. This is where the spiritual delusion will start to creep in. And the psalm will say that actually you will block the power of the Ruach in your lives. You will claim to walk in the Spirit, but there will be no fruit of the Spirit in your life. This is why the Apostle Paul would say there are those that have the appearance of reverence, the appearance of the reverence of Elohim, but deny its power. And it gives you a list of characteristics before that. And Paul says, do not associate yourselves with these. Turn away from them. Why? If you lay down with dogs, you rise up with fleas. It says that not only those who worship these false idols become like them, but if you keep company with idolaters, you will become like them. Your eyes will start becoming blinded. Your ears will become deafened, and you will actually block the Ruach in your life. Why? Because you're not worshiping Elohim, though you think you are. You're praising him with your lips, but keeping your heart far from him. You're walking away from the light of accountability. You're going everywhere else for counsel but Elohim and those he has put in your life. You are creating Elohim in your own image, and there's great warnings associated with that. In Isaiah 44, last week we quoted a few passages from the Isaiah 40s, I call it. These great insights into the eternal perspective of this test that we call life and its very purpose. We quoted some passages that made our spirits leap for joy, that maybe raised some very interesting questions that the whore of Babylon, this mystery Babylon, is actually preventing us and denying us from asking. But there are also some warnings within the Isaiah 40s, within the context of this eternal plan of redemption. Thus says Yah, the King of Israel and his Redeemer, Yah of hosts, I am the first and I am the last. Besides me, there is no Elohim. By the way, the book of Revelation will say that that's Messiah. Who is like me? Who is like me? Remember the warning. Shall the potter be reckoned as the clay? Let him proclaim it. Let him declare it before me and set it before me. Go for it, he's essentially saying. Have at it. Since I appointed an ancient people. In Hebrew, the ancient people, Am Olam. Am means nation or people. Olam means eternity, the ages. Let him declare and set it before me, since I appointed an eternal people, an eternal nation. Let them declare what is to come and what will happen. He's almost saying that facetiously. Go on, predict it. Only I know. Fear not, nor be afraid. Have I not told you from of old and declared it? And you are my witnesses. Is there an Elohim besides me? There is no rock. I know not any. And what's the warning given to us regarding the potter and the clay? That the clay brought Elohim down to its own image and then exalted itself to the level of Elohim. What happened? It continues. All who fashion idols are nothing, and the things they delight in do not profit. Their witnesses neither see nor know, that they may be put to shame. We saw the warning of idolatry, that your eyes will become blinded, your ears will become deafened, you will block the power of the Ruach, you will praise him with your lips, but keep your hearts far from him. And look at what it's saying here. All who fashion, the word there is yatsar, to form. And so we know that Elohim forms, okay? But what happens when man attempts to form something? Do you see what's going on here? It says that all who form idols are nothing. The English is very misleading. The word for nothing here is tohu. Formlessness, confusion, unreality, emptiness, place of chaos, that which is empty or unreal. This is the same word used that the earth was formless and void. Let that sink in. And Elohim says, I did not create the earth, formless and void. I did not create it, tohu. What happened? Did the clay say to the potter, you do not understand? Did the clay bring Elohim down to its level? Did it exalt itself above Elohim? Did it create Elohim in its own image? Isaiah 40 says that man's attempt at forming something will lead to chaos. It will lead to nothingness, formlessness. Look around right now and behold man's attempt at forming something. How does it look? How does it look? It would seem that the ability to yatsar and to create, bara, is reserved for Elohim alone. We are to worship the creator, the potter. We're not to create or form our own gods, even if we put the name of Elohim to it. Because where that leads is formlessness, confusion, unreality, chaos. What do we see today? Do we see confusion? Do we see chaos? Do we see a lack of order? Do we see false worship? Do we see pride? Do we see blinded eyes, deafened ears, a lack of the power of the Ruach? Nothing new under the sun. Their witnesses neither see nor know, that they may be put to shame. It's telling you, if you become like your idols, if you engage into idolatry, you will be put to shame. Think rewards and losses at the judgment seat of Messiah. Who fashions or forms, yatsar, a god, or casts an idol that is profitable for nothing? He's saying, every time you attempt this, things go south, big time. Behold, all his companions shall be put to shame. It doesn't say they shall be put in the lake of fire. It says they shall be put to shame. What did Daniel 12 say? Those at that time will be a great resurrection, and many shall arise to eternal, their names will be written in the stars, but some will rise to what? Eternal contempt, shame. And the craftsmen are only human. Let them all assemble, let them stand forth. They shall be terrified, they shall be put to shame together. Remember what we covered last week? That Elohim created this time domain for the seat of judgment. What will be one of the primary things it will be judged for? I believe it's the potter and the clay dynamic. Man's been busy trying to yatsar, and look at where it's got us. And we yatsar Elohim in our own image and call it Elohim, and then do quote unquote mighty deeds in his name. How's that working? Let's add another layer to this. The mouth speaks from the overflow of the heart. Our words and actions come forth, are a barometer of what's going on in our hearts. Psalm 59, deliver me from my enemies, O my Elohim. Protect me from those who rise up against me. Deliver me from those who work evil and save me from bloodthirsty men. King David wrote this psalm when Saul sent men to watch David's house in order to kill him. Who are these enemies? The Romans? The Philistines? The politicians? No, it's those in the house. Vessels of dishonor. Those that have a form of godliness but deny its power. Those that have created Elohim in their own image and as a result are now in spiritual delusion. For behold, they lie in wait for my life. Fierce men stir up strife against me. For no transgression or sin of mine, O Yah, or no fault of mine, they run and make ready. Awake, come to meet me and see. It continues. Each evening, they come back howling like dogs and prowling about the city. Who's outside the gates of the renewed Jerusalem? Outside of what? The dogs and the sorcerers and the adulterers. Those that have fallen foul of spiritual adultery. These were not born in Mount Zion. They minded the earthly, not the heavenly. Here they are bellowing. Now look at the key characteristic here. Bellowing with their mouths, with swords in their lips. For who they think will hear us. Isn't this the same mentality that we read of the clay hiding its counsels from Yah? Who sees us? Who knows us? Look at what David says. Kill them not, lest my people forget. Don't kill them. Make them totter by your power and bring them down, O Yah, our shield. The word for totter in Hebrew is the word nuah. It means to quiver, to totter, to shake, reel, to stagger. But look at this, to wander, to sift. So he's saying sift them, make them wander, make them tremble, scatter them, to be tossed about. Who does the Apostle Paul say is tossed about? By every wind of teaching, always learning, never coming to the knowledge of truth, to cause to wander like a vagabond. He's saying, don't kill them, scatter them. Make them wander. Sift them. By your power. Does that change it a little bit? Why? For the sin of their mouths, the words of their lips. Let them be trapped in pride. For the cursing and the lies that they utter. Consume them in wrath. Think the fulfillment of the fall appointed times here with the wrath. But look at the word here for utter. The word for utter there is safar. This word that became our springboard for the whole series. And so last week we covered in Malachi, one day you will see the difference between those that serve him and between those that do not. Those that fear him and those that do not. The warning here of the clay trying to become the potter are those that do not fear him, those that do not serve him, and pride. Their pride comes forth from their heart. And look at what ends up coming out of their mouths. Look at what they safar. And so here's the question. What are we to proclaim? What are we to safar? Are we going to be those that proclaim and recount the great plan of redemption that we scratched at the surface over the course of this series? Or are we going to be like these people, proud, arrogant, praising Elohim with our lips, but keeping our hearts far from him, spiritually deluded, void of the Ruach in our lives and its fruit. Because if that's where we end up, look at what ends up coming from our mouth. The warning is that, look at David's request, don't kill them. Let them experience your wrath. Oh, you better believe that the tribulation is for the believer. Consume them till they are no more, that they may know that Elohim rules over Jacob to the ends of the earth. Selah. What does Paul say regarding the judgment seat of Messiah? That day will be like fire testing our works that we've done here in this time domain. And if they're made of gold, precious stone, then a reward will remain. But in that fire, if they're made of wood, hay, stubble, nothing will remain. Is this what the psalm is speaking of? Why? Do you see the warning here? What are we to proclaim? Because our proclamation is a barometer of where our heart's at and what's written on it. Our proclamation is a barometer of who we truly worship. Do we safar the plan of redemption and its depth, or do we safar and kill our brothers with our mouths? Selah. Psalm 64, hear my voice, O Elohim, in my complaint. Preserve my life from dread of the enemy. Hide me from the secret plots of the wicked, from the throng of evildoers. Look at this, who whet their tongues like swords, who aim bitter words like arrows, shooting from ambush at the blameless, shooting at him suddenly and without fear. If you have the fear of Elohim, you would not be doing this. You would not be doing this. If this is your MO, maybe you've created Elohim in your own image. And you may even be doing this in his name, quote unquote. They hold fast to their evil purposes. Look at this. They safar. They talk of laying snares secretly, thinking, who can see them? Look at the pride and the arrogance oozing from them. They search out injustice, saying, we have accomplished a diligent search, for the inward mind and heart of man are deep. The heart is desperately sick and wicked. Who can know it? You know, in Jude, it says that those in our midst are like blind, unreasoning beasts. It says they have accomplished a diligent search. There's actually some Hebrew wordplay going on here, and the English is actually a bit of a terrible translation. You've got this word for diligent is the word chafas, okay? And the word for search is chefes. So you've actually got these two words come from the same root. You've got, it's essentially, we've accomplished a chafas, chefes, okay? Now, chafas, it can mean to search out diligently, but look at this, it can mean to disguise oneself, to devise, to scheme, to be exposed, to conceal. You're seeking something out and you're doing it in the dark. You're not coming to the light. And the word for search, chafes, it's something covert, something that which is done in the dark, usually a trick, a plot, or a shrewd device. And so essentially, what these people do, they think that you see the pride, the arrogance, they use their tongue for spiritual murder. And they do these schemes, they scheme, they do these wicked plots to entrap the righteous. Think the Pharisees and the Sadducees and what they did to Messiah. Whose name did they do all that in? Did they create Elohim in their own image? They literally spat at and pulled the beard out of the potter. Oh, the spiritual delusion ran deep. That's not us. We're not guilty of that. Really? Really? It goes on, more in number than the hairs of my head are those who hate me without cause. Mighty are those who would destroy me, those who attack me with lies. What I did not steal, must I now restore? Oh, you need to do this, you need to do that. Oh, Elohim, look at this. You know my folly. The wrongs I have done are not hidden from you. David's not pulling the innocent party card here. He's saying, you know where I've fallen short. But this, I didn't do this. Yes, I am fallen. Yes, I'm a work in progress. But that which they accuse me of, nuh-uh. Let not those who hope in you be put to shame through me. O Master Yah of hosts, let not those who seek you be brought to dishonor through me, O Elohim of Israel. Why is David seeking justice? Is he seeking it for himself? He's seeking it for others, for the sake of others. Look, he says, for it is your sake that I have borne reproach, that dishonor has covered my face. He said, he's essentially saying, yeah, if you don't deal with this, those that are truly seeking you will face shame and reproach from those people. Let that not be. David is essentially saying, fine, if it comes upon me, fine, but let it not come upon them. Wow. What humility. He's literally laying down his life. It continues, for zeal for your house has consumed me, and the reproaches of those who reproach you have fallen on me. The Gospels say Yeshua fulfilled this when he chased out the moneylenders in the temple. When I wept and humbled my soul with fasting, it became my reproach. So even when those that were vessels of dishonor, twisted everything David was doing. They were essentially saying, oh, look at him fast. It's all in vain. What a fool. When I made sackcloth my clothing, I became a byword to them. I am the talk of those who sit in the gate. Those who sat in the gates, by the way, were the leaders and the judges and the so-called wise men. And the drunkards make songs about me. What's one of the promises given to us for our idolatry? In praising him with our lips, but keeping our hearts far from him. The spirit of deep sleep and the spirit of spiritual drunkenness. Should make you think about some of the songs coming out of the harlot system. It continues. For they persecute him whom you... Now, listen to this. They persecute him whom you have struck down, and they recount, they safar, the pain of those you have wounded. David knows where this storm is coming from, that Yah's allowing it for the purpose of his sifting, his refinement, and his cleansing. Do you see that when you become a vessel of dishonor, when you create Elohim in your own image, they were essentially mocking the work of Elohim in David's life. Think Job's friends and what they were saying to Job. Who allowed all that stuff to go in Job's life? That was the work of Yah. He used the adversary to do it, yes, but Yah allowed it for a very precise purpose. David is saying they're mocking the work of your hands in my life. And to them, punishment adds to them, punishment upon punishment. Let them not enter into your righteousness. Let them be blotted out of the book of the living. Let them not be written with the righteous. He's saying, let them not be part of the heavenly census. Honor, shame, rewards, losses, those who fear him, those who do not. Bride, not bride. But I am afflicted and in pain. Let your Yeshua, O Elohim, your salvation, set me on high. This is the problem with the potter and the clay dynamic. When you create Elohim in your own image, you're bringing him down to your level. You're exalting yourself to his level. You're doing that by your own hand. By the power of my hand, I have done all these things. King Nebuchadnezzar said. We were warned in the Torah that when we got comfortable, he says, do not think that by the power of your hand you got all this. I gave it to you. What's David saying? You set me up on high. You lift me up. I will not do it myself. I will not be the idolatrous clay. You are the potter. You have afflicted me. You have struck me down. Let your will have its perfect work in me. But these people that are mocking me in the work of your hands in my life, let them be blotted out of the book. This is very bold writing here, bold statements. Here, this is Psalm 50. This is Yah speaking through the psalmist. Hear, O my people, and I will speak, O Israel. I will testify against you. Not the nations, not the Romans, not the unbelievers. I will testify against you. I am Elohim, your Elohim. That's the opening of the 10 words, by the way. I am your Elohim, who brought you out of the bond servitude of Egypt. Not for your sacrifices do I rebuke you. Your burnt offerings are continually before me. Oh, you worship me indeed, but you keep your hearts far from me. I will not accept a bull from your house or goats from your folds. For every beast of the forest is mine, the cattle on 1,000 hills. I know all the birds of the hills, and all that moves in the field is mine. You can see he's saying your burnt offerings are continually before me, like it's wearing him out. He's saying, you're wearing me out. I don't want it. It's not coming from a clean heart. If I were hungry, I would not tell you, for the world and its fullness are mine. Do I eat the flesh of bulls or drink the blood of goats? Is that what he wants? He tells you what he wants. Sacrifice to Elohim, thanksgiving. Perform your vows to the Most High. Actually perform them. There's actually a Torah commandment that says, do not make these vows rashly, giving it all the big talk, but not following through. Call upon me in the day of trouble. I will deliver you, and you shall glorify me. He says, call upon me, not the idol you've created of me. Call upon me, not your version of me. But to the wicked, Elohim says, what right do you have to recite my statutes or take my covenant on your lips? This is within the house, and the word there for recite is safar. That which we are to proclaim. What Yah is essentially saying is that if we become the idolatrous clay, if we create him in our own image, if we praise him with our lips but keep our hearts far from him, if we become those that have a form of godliness but deny its power, he's literally saying, what right do you have to have my covenant on your lips? And then he gives you more. For you hate discipline, and you cast my words behind you. The word for discipline in the Hebrew is the word musar. And when you look at it within the context of Proverbs, it's those that seek accountability and discipleship and the wisdom of those that have gone before them. Those that are of Elohim will come to the light to show that their works were wrought in the light. The idolatrous clay goes anywhere but the light. Who sees us? Hide our counsel from Elohim and those he's put in our lives. We know better. He continues, if you see a thief, you are pleased with him, and you keep company with adulterers. Think spiritual here. You give your mouth free rein for evil, and your tongue frames deceit. You sit and speak against your brothers. You slander your own mother's son. Yah seems to be very concerned about what's coming out of our mouths, because it's a reflection of what's going on in our heart and what we truly worship. So again, what's the proclamation going forth as we draw closer to the fulfillment of the appointed times? Is it the plan of redemption? Or is it our version of it? Are we proclaiming Yeshua and salvation? Or are we proclaiming our idol of Yeshua? Our image of him? Because we have a whole harlot system doing the latter. Meanwhile, the blood of the saints is found in her. Come out of her, my people. Who deals with her? Yah has a way of dealing with Mystery Babylon. We're not to fight it, we're to come out of it. He continues, these things you have done, and I have been silent. Look at this. You thought that I was one like yourself. You brought me down to your level. You created me in your image. You were the clay that thought you knew better. And the outcome of doing this is tohu. How did the earth become tohu? Mark this then. But now I rebuke you and lay the charge before you. Why do you think that the 10 matters, what do they open up with? I am Yah, your Elohim, not some version of me. Do not have any other gods before me. Do not create an image, because if you do, you will actually reap cursings down to the 3rd and 4th generation. The opening of the covenant is directly dealing with idolatry. And then it says, do not bring the name of Yah to naught. Do not take his name in vain. You know, I considered going down the road of the lifting up his name to nothing, taking his name in vain as part of this teaching, but I realized it would be too much of a diversion. And so I think when we return from Sukkot, I'm going to deal with the opening of the covenant regarding idolatry. But that commandment of taking his name not in vain, when you look at the word for vain, I think it's the word shav. It can actually be used of idolatry. And so you can actually render that, do not lift up the name of Elohim to your idolatry. And that's right after saying, do not create a carved or molded image. Now, what was the warning in this psalm? What right do you have to recite, to safar, my covenant? My covenant. Oh, we worship Elohim. When we create him in our own image, we're lifting up his name to idolatry. That's how serious it is. And the outcome of that will be what comes out our mouths and heart and our pride. Mark this then, you who forget Elohim, who have you forgotten him for? Your own version of him. He's telling you, you've created me in your own image, lest I tear you apart and there be none to deliver. The one who offers thanksgiving, i.e. the fruit of the lips. What is it that's coming forth from our mouth? Is it coming from a heart of integrity? As his sacrifice glorifies me. To one who orders his way rightly, I will show the salvation of Elohim. I will show him Yeshua. Not our image of him. Oh, the delusion runs deep. In Ezekiel 20, there's this prophecy. As I live, declares the Master Yah, surely with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm and with wrath poured out, I will be king over you. Think the fulfillment of the fall appointed times. When will there be a distinction made between those who serve and fear him and versus those that do not? I believe it's at the bridal selection. I will bring you out from the peoples and gather you out of the countries where you are scattered. So this is the fulfillment of the fall appointed times there, the great regathering, with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm and with wrath poured out. Who is or what is the right hand of Elohim, right? Now look at this. I will bring you into the wilderness of the peoples of the nations, and there I will enter into judgment with you face to face. I will judge my house, is what he's saying. As I entered into judgment with your fathers in the wilderness of the land of Egypt, so I will enter into judgment with you, declares the Master Yah. Think the bema seat of Messiah, rewards and losses, okay? I will make you pass under the rod, and I will bring you into the bond of covenant. The passing under the rod, there's only one other reference to it, and that is found in the Torah. And this is where you would do the tithe of the flock. Every 10th sheep would pass under the rod, and it would be taken to the altar of sacrifice. By the way, for those, to even be eligible to pass under the rod, you had to be without spot or blemish. But, sorry, hang on. Just because you were eligible to pass under the rod didn't mean you did. Again, think back to Yeshua's statement, do not rejoice that the demons are subject to you, but rejoice that your name are written in the heavens. How many of those 70 made it to the bridal position? The 70 were eligible. There was a tithe, though. Look at this. Those that are passed under the rod, those that make the tithe of the flock, they get brought into the bond of covenant. This is marriage language. What did we just read in the Psalm regarding Elohim's warning? What right do you have to have my covenant on your lips? This tithe of the flock has the right. The covenant was written on her heart. Therefore, she's brought into the bond of covenant. This is marriage language. He makes this very clear. I will purge out the rebels from among you. This is judgment. That means that some in the house will go into the bond of covenant. Some of the house will be deemed rebels and will need purging. And those who transgress against me, again, who are those that fear and serve him? Who are those that not? When will that distinction be made clear once again? Now look at what he says. Regarding these rebels and those who transgress, I will bring them out of the land where they sojourn. I will resurrect them, but they shall not enter the land of Israel. Then you will know that I am Yah. They will not reap the blessing of Abraham. They have lost their reward. Not only are they not allowed into the New Jerusalem, they're not even allowed into the land of Israel. This is why Yeshua says there will be those of the nations that enter the kingdom before you. And he says that to the Pharisees. There will be those foreigners of the nations. They will get to enter the kingdom. You won't, though. Why? Rebels, transgressed against him, idolatrous, created Elohim in their own image. Then you will know that I am Yah, in the day that I make my what, as Malachi says, treasured possession. Those that have passed under the rod and actually become the rod of Elohim. And what is the context of this? It goes on. As for you, O house of Israel, thus says the Master Yah, go serve every one of you his idols. Now and hereafter, if you will not listen to me, but my holy name you shall no more profane with your gifts and your idols. You will no longer take my name in vain. Idolatry. This is why Revelation says, let the righteous be more righteous, let the filthy be more filthy. We're now coming to the time where it's like, let the blind lead the blind. Always learning, never coming to the knowledge of truth, turn away from them. Let them be more filthy. Let them worship their image of Elohim. You're wasting your time. Because if you keep company with them, you'll become like them. Your eyes will become blind, your ears will become deaf, and you will block the power of the Ruach in your life. For on my holy mountain, the mountain height of Israel, this is where Zion will be, declares the Master Yah. All the house of Israel, all of them shall serve me in the land. We've just read that those who are idolatrous within the house will be purged out and that they will be gathered, they will be resurrected, but they won't enter the land. So who is it that gets to go into the land? The house of Israel, all of them. They shall serve me in the land. There I will accept them, and there I will require your contributions and the choicest of your gifts with all your sacred offerings. Those that were purged out, the rebels, they were not found in the census, the heavenly census. That's what it boils down to. They minded the earthly, not the heavenly. They created Elohim in their own image. Will we be a part of the heavenly census and actually be a part of the house of Israel? Because the promise is, if you are truly of his house, you will enter. If you are not, though you claim to be, the door will be slammed in your face. That's why there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth in outer darkness. because they were given the opportunity. They did know better, yet they served their idols. Even if that idol, we slapped a God sticker on it and an Elohim sticker on it. Elohim's tally. In Ezekiel 9, the warning gets real. Then this is Ezekiel, he's seeing these great visions regarding the judgment of Judah at the time. But this has great overtones of the fulfillment of the fall appointed times. Then he cried in my ears with a loud voice, saying, bring near the executioners of this city. The city is Jerusalem, by the way, each with his destroying weapon in his hand. And behold, 6 men came from the direction of the upper gate, which faces north, each with his weapon for slaughter in his hand. And with them was a man clothed in linen, with a writer's inkhorn at his waist. The word for writer there is sofer. It's a scribe. The root word of that is safar, to count, to recount. Okay? So a sofer, safar, right? A scribe inscribes. He recounts. Remember, this is this word. And they went and stood beside the bronze altar, which is the temple, in the temple. Now the glory of the Elohim of Israel had gone up from the cherub on which it rested to the threshold of the house. And he called to the man clothed in linen, who had the writer's inkhorn at his waist. Okay. Elohim is creating a tally. Remember that Elohim writes, he safars in his book, in his sefer, the names of those who are born in Zion, the names of those that fear and serve him. And Yah said to him, pass through the city, through Jerusalem, and put a mark on the foreheads of the men. The word there for mark is the word tav. Interesting. Put a tav on the foreheads of the men who sigh and groan over all the abominations that are committed in it. The people that are getting the mark or the tav of Elohim on their forehead are those that can see the wickedness going on in the house of Israel, which implies they have the covenant written on their hearts. To the others, he said in my hearing, the 6 destroyers, pass through the city after him and strike. Your eye shall not spare, and you shall show no pity. Kill old men outright, young men and maidens, little children and women, but touch no one on whom is the mark, the tav. Begin at my sanctuary. And so they began with the elders who were before the house, the authorities, the so-called shepherds, the so-called guides who'd created Elohim in their own image. By the way, when you really dig into this, you can make a clear correlation to the 6 trumpets to this. Anyway, where does judgment begin? And what is what we're being judged by? I would argue is by the covenant. To the wicked, Yah says, what right do you have to recite my covenant and take it on your lips? I hope people are threading all this together. Then he said to them, defile the house. Speaking of the temple, that was Solomon's temple, by the way. That's how bad things had got in his house. And fill the courts with the slain, go out. And so they went out and struck in the city. This vision becomes the basis for why Judah would be taken into captivity by Babylon. It's telling you why in the form of a vision. And while they were striking, and I was left alone, I fell upon my face and cried, Ah, Master Yah, will you destroy all the remnant of Israel in the outpouring of your wrath on Jerusalem? Then he said to me, the guilt of the Romans, of the politicians. No, the guilt of the house of Israel and Judah is exceedingly great. The land is full of blood, the city full of injustice. For they say, Yah has forsaken the land, and look at this, Yah does not see. What was the character trait of the idolatrous clay? Who sees us? Those that praise him with their lips but keep their hearts far from him, who hide their counsels from Yah. Who sees us? As for me, my eye will not spare, nor will I have pity. I will bring their deeds upon their heads, judgment. And the books were opened. And behold, the man clothed in linen, with the writer's inkhorn at his waist, the scribe. He brought back word and saying, I have done as you commanded me. I believe this vision is giving you insight as to how Elohim is actually writing these names of his census in his book. What is one of the determining factors of being in that heavenly census? You can only weep and sigh at the abominations done in the body if his covenant is written on your heart. If you truly understand his covenant, that's the only way you can. It's the only way you can see the harlot's system and her idolatries and her abominations, which we're commanded to have come out of. Ezekiel 9. I want to show a direct parallel to something that many of you may have already seen in Revelation 9, 1-6. The fifth angel blew his trumpet, and I saw a star fallen from heaven to earth, and he was given the key to the shaft of the bottomless pit. He opened the shaft of the bottomless pit, and from the shaft rose smoke like the smoke of a great furnace, and the smoke and the air were darkened with the smoke from the shaft. Then from the smoke came locusts on the earth, and they were given power like the power of scorpions of the earth. Now listen to this. They were told not to harm the grass of the earth, nor any green plant or any green tree, but only those people who do not have the seal of Elohim on their foreheads. Now, 3 chapters prior, we're given the account of the sealing of the 144,000. I believe the vision of Ezekiel 9 is giving you one of the characteristics of the 144,000. Who has the tav, or the mark of Elohim, on their forehead? Those who sigh and weep at the abominations done within his body. For that to be an outcome, you must have the covenant written on your heart. Truly. By the way, the vision of Ezekiel 9 is telling you that when these events in Revelation come to take place, there will be believers that will be harmed by these locusts. The 144,000 is not the totality of believers at that time. It's a portion of them. They were allowed to torment them for 5 months, but not to kill them. And their torment was like the torment of a scorpion when it stings someone. Some of that will be so-called believers, if you take the whole counsel of the word. And in those days, people will seek death and will not find it. They will long to die, but death will flee from them. That's a whole other discussion. But will man at that time have a counterfeit of immortality? A counterfeit. Whole other discussion. But for the sake of today, I hope people are seeing the clear and direct parallels between the vision of Ezekiel 9 and this vision of Revelation 9. It was happening then. It's going to happen again. Nothing new under the sun. Elohim does not change. He is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And so, what type of clay will we be in the potter's hands? Because that will determine what we safar from our lips. Will we proclaim Yeshua, or will we be proclaiming our image of him? Will we bring the potter down to our level, or will we exalt ourselves to the potter's level? Because there's promises given to us. There's warnings associated with what we declare, with what we recount. What we declare, what we recount, is literally a barometer of who we worship. And whoever or whatever we worship, we will become. And so I want to finish by quoting the Apostle Paul. If I understand all mysteries, but have not love, what's the point? We've covered some mysteries as part of this series. But if we have not love, what's it for? This is why the Feast of Unleavened Bread is critically important. Leaven, delusion, whitewashing, spiritual adultery, creating Elohim in our own image. It's so important that Yah made it part of the plan of redemption. He put it in his appointed times. That's how serious it is. This is how serious it is. Because if we don't rid the leaven in our lives, if we create Elohim in our image, Elohim will literally say to us, what right do you have to recite my covenant? Let that not be us. Let us come out of her. Amen?